Choose vegan, the best decision you'll ever make in your life.
Heartfelt greetings, noble viewers. I am Baltha, an expressive poet from the United Kingdom, with an immense enjoyment of observing the world around me. The witty people of the United Kingdom adore the brilliance of your mind that is manifested through your joyful sense of humour. May you enjoy the cheer and jubilance of your loved ones. Throughout the history of mankind, the divine messages are often shrouded in mystery. Prophets, messiahs, or whichever names you call them, are often persecuted and oppressed, their words obscured. But how do we distinguish the true from the false? To do so, one can only rely on the divine's guidance, and the truth will reveal itself to those who earnestly seek it. Ursula Southiel was a prophetess who lived during the same era as the famed soothsayer Nostradamus. She was 15 years his senior, and although she did not have the same educational opportunities as Nostradamus, she was equally as savvy and was recognized with distinction. Ursula was born in 1488 in Knaresborough, North Yorkshire, in England. Her mother was a teenage orphan, shrouded in poverty. It is believed that Ursula and her mother lived away from town in a nearby cave where she was born. It is said that through living so close to nature, Ursula began to commune with the natural world. Her love connection to the earth, the trees, the plants, the animal people, and the waterways likely heightened her psychic abilities. An abbot took pity on the pair, and at the age of 2 years old, placed Ursula into a foster home and placed her mother into a nunnery, where unfortunately she died a few years later. Ursula keenly studied herbal medicine, and as her knowledge grew, she became a valuable herbalist within her town. This gave her the opportunity to interact with more townspeople. In doing so, she happened to meet her future husband, Toby Shipton, who she married at the age of 24. Upon marriage, she adopted her husband's surname, and hence came to be known as Mrs. Shipton. 2 years later, in 1514, her husband's untimely death occurred. As an easy target for mistreatment, Mrs. Shipton was plagued by gossip, suspicion, and finger-pointing about his death, as well as her own idiosyncrasies and her physical abnormalities. So she moved back to her cave. Despite the rumors about her and gossip about her unattractive physical features, the only information that seems accurately recorded is that Mother Shipton had an angled nose and a spinal deformation or hunchback. A more contemporary portrait of her might give us a clearer picture of her appearance. Her psychic insight was evident at an early age. She foresaw local events which made people realize that she was indeed a soothsayer. For example,
Water shall come over Ouse Bridge, and a windmill shall be set upon a tower, and an elm tree shall lie at every man's door.
this came true when a water pipe system was introduced to Yorkshire for the first time, with the pipes made of elm trees. The pipes carried water drawn with a windmill built on a conduit house that went across the Ouse Bridge to every house.
Before Ouse Bridge and Trinity Church meets, they shall build it in the day, and it shall fall in the night, until they get the highest stone of Trinity Church to be the lowest stone of Ouse Bridge.
Trinity Church was later blown down by a tempest, and parts of Ouse Bridge were destroyed by a flood. Although people worked to repair the bridge, the structures fell down in the night, until finally the highest stone of the Trinity steeple was used as the foundation of the bridge. Mrs. Shipton eventually won the support of the community, who realized that she had much to offer the world. She would share her predictions about other people's lives and what she knew about herbs and natural healing with those who sought her knowledge and talent. During medieval times, most people didn't have a chance to see doctors and sought local herbalists, monasteries, and apothecaries to obtain healing herbs. So herbalists took on the role of doctors, and people flocked to her for remedies as well as consulting for their future. It is said that when she became an older woman, and people had the utmost confidence in her abilities, she came to be known as Mother Shipton. Mother Shipton became famous for the accuracy of her visions that revealed dramatic changes that would ring with exactness. Predictions such as the disbanding of the powerful Catholic Church by Henry VIII and the rise of Queen Elizabeth I to the throne of England brought both credibility and whispers of fear of her abilities.
In London, Primrose Hill shall be, in centre hold a bishop's see.
Primrose Hill is a park in London once owned by King Henry VIII of England. He broke with the Roman Catholic Church and had Parliament declare him to be the supreme head of the Church of England because the Pope wouldn't grant him a marriage annulment for his marriage to Catherine of Aragon. This was the beginning of Protestant reform in England. Protestants believed people should be responsible for their own faith, not looking to the Catholic Church and its representatives for spiritual salvation and guidance. See is a Latin origin word that denotes the seat or chair of a bishop, which means the bishop's authority. Hence, one could say that the king adopted a role similar to that of a bishop.
The lion fears being dead and gone, a maiden queen shall reign anon. The papal power shall bear no sway, Rome's creed shall hence be swept away. The Western monarch's wooden horses shall be destroyed by the Drake's forces.
As the lions were a state symbol of medieval England, the lion here refers to the fierce Queen Mary I. Soon after her death, the maiden queen, or Queen Elizabeth I, succeeded the crown in 1558. Queen Elizabeth I was indeed a maiden who never married while ruling England for over 40 years. Queen Elizabeth supported Protestantism and hence became the sole head of state and religion of England. During her reign, faith in the Pope and the Vatican was substantially reduced among her subjects, and subsequently their power over England was also weakened. Regarding the wooden horses that Mother Shipton mentioned, this refers to the Spanish Armada. Under the rule of monarch King Philip II of Spain and Portugal, the Armada, with the Pope's support, attempted to attack England in order to expand the influence of the Catholic Church. However, the English successfully fought against the Spanish fleet. Francis Drake was one of the leading naval commanders who led the victory of England under Queen Elizabeth I. With special discernment and wisdom that helped her win the support of many in her community, Mother Shipton sustained herself by reading the fortunes of people who visited her to ask what was to come. It is said she was consulted by people from all levels of society, as her name spread far and wide, including the king who sent his men to get advice from her. Mother Shipton worked locally and nationally for the rich and poor, and presented information on issues relating to everyday and spiritual concerns. To avoid the threat of persecution for witchcraft and to capture the public's imagination, Mother Shipton cleverly dressed her more controversial and noteworthy prophecies in the form of poetic rhyme and verse. Some of her poetry foretold significant changes in circumstances that would occur centuries into the future and seem to include our present time and beyond. It is recorded that on one occasion, while sharing her visions with an abbot who had great esteem for her, she withdrew abruptly with a deep sigh. Her tears began to flow and she was wringing her hands, as if some extraordinary mischance had befallen her.
"Ah, Mr. Abbot," she said, "who can with dry eyes repeat what must next ensue, or but think upon it without a heart full of agony? To see virtue trampled on and vice exalted, beggars on horseback and princes on foot, the innocent condemned, and the bloodthirsty go scot-free. But since my promise binds me to fulfill your request, I shall proceed from where I left off. I know I go, I know I'm free, I know that this will come to be. Secreted this, for this will be found by later dynasty."
In 1561, at the ripe age of 73, Mother Shipton died in Clifton, Yorkshire, 5 years before Nostradamus' passing. Just as Mother Shipton had alluded to, her prophecies were discovered by later dynasties. In our previous episode, we learned about Mother Shipton's life, in which she was shunned by society as a young lady, then went on to become a widely respected and sought-after herbalist and seeress. Mother Shipton's prophecies focused on local and global events, as well as events in her near future, spanning right up to and beyond our present time. In this episode, we will continue to explore her insightful prophecies.
"In England now will come to pass a house that shall be built of glass."
This seems to prophesize the Crystal Palace that was built in London in 1851. The elaborate structure was built for the Great Exhibition planned by Prince Albert, husband of Queen Victoria, who invited international intellects and talents to showcase their latest inventions. This successful event attracted more than 14,000 exhibitors from around the world and more than 6 million visitors. And with clear glass walls and slim iron rods, the building itself was a sensation. The Crystal Palace became an architectural standard for subsequent international exhibits and continued to host shows, concerts, and other events until it was destroyed by a fire in 1936.
"In the water shall iron float, the same as now a wooden boat. More wonders still shall water do, and England yet emit a dew."
In the 1800s, ships that were once made of wood began to be made with iron. Compared to wooden ships, these newer boats were considered to be far safer and more durable and enabled travel over longer distances as well as faster journeys with larger loading capacities. Mother Shipton also mentions other wonders of water. This may refer to hydroelectric energy that was invented in the late 19th century. Hydropower harnesses the energy from flowing water, such as cascading waterfall flow, to generate electricity. Today, hydropower provides about 16% of our world's electricity and is the most commonly used renewable source of electricity. During Mother Shipton's time, the Jewish population in England were persecuted and expelled from the country. But as prophesied in 1656, they were readmitted.
"Great accidents the world will fill, and carriages without horses go, whilst in the twinkling of an eye, around the world our thoughts shall fly."
The first locomotive was invented in 1804. This invention would go on to allow the transport of people and commodities via railway. The first automobile was invented in 1769, and as automobile technology developed, horse-drawn carriages were superseded, with most people now reliant on cars as a source of transportation. However, road vehicles have become a major public health concern, with a plethora of accidents on roads between vehicles, as well as accidents involving pedestrians. The World Health Organization has stated that in 2016 alone, there were 1.35 million fatalities due to road traffic injury. This equated to one person every 26 seconds on average. Mother Shipton also mentions, "Our thoughts shall fly incredibly quickly." This reminds us of the internet, which was enabled step by step through the invention of the phone network, and eventually through computing systems in the 1950s. The creation of the World Wide Web in 1989 is said to have revolutionized the way that we communicate. In the 1990s, only approximately 0.5% of the world's population were online. Nowadays, many of us use the internet, which makes our thoughts fly around the world. It is tightly integrated with people's daily lives, and as such, it's almost impossible to imagine a world without the internet.
Through towering hills proud men shall ride, no horse or ass move by his side. Beneath the water men shall walk, shall ride, shall sleep, shall even talk.
It seems she also foresaw the cities with skyscrapers and cars running among them, as well as underwater housing that attracts tourists with fascinating views and the experience of living among the wonderful citizens of the sea. We have also had submarines that people have ridden in for some time. The first supercar submarine has also been developed, and many holiday goers have enjoyed submarine tours that allow them to take a leisurely and beautiful trip beneath the ocean's surface.
For in those wondrous far-off days, the women shall adopt a craze to dress like men and trousers wear, and to cut off their locks of hair. They'll ride astride with brazen brow, as witches do on broomsticks now.
She also seemed to be surprised by the changes in women she saw in her vision, taking the freedom of wearing pants and suits, maintaining shorter hair, and some riding bicycles and motorcycles.
And roaring monsters with men atop that seem to eat the verdant crop. And men shall fly as birds do now, and give away the horse and plough.
This line reminds us of tractors and crop harvesting machines with farmers driving them, the use of airplanes in mega farms to plant seeds, and spray fertilizers to crops over large areas quickly and efficiently.
Then love shall die and marriage cease, and nations wane as babes decrease.
Mother Shipton prophesied that a time would come where love between spouses would fade. According to Our World in Data, the global number of divorces since the 1970s has increased. We are also seeing marriage rates and birth rates decrease steadily. It has been predicted that by 2100, 23 nations will have their population halved as a result of less babies being born.
Man will ruin kinder lives by taking them as to their wives, and murder foul and brutal deed when man will only think of greed.
This prophecy may be indicating that humans are destroying the lives of kinder beings en masse as we slaughter billions of animal people each year for food. Not only are they slaughtered, they are artificially inseminated without their consent. These animal people are exploited and helpless, and they have no means to protect themselves. Mother Shipton accurately depicts that these kind animal people are murdered immorally and brutally for selfish gain due to greed, indulging their taste buds, and for financial power via monetary profit and hoarding. In facilities that imprison cow, pig, chicken people, etc., there is forcible impregnation in order to produce babies. When baby calves are born, they are snatched away from their mothers, while their mothers are imprisoned in barren conditions, and their milk is taken for human consumption. Their lives are ruined, as they are not permitted to live in any natural or dignified conditions. Male calves are slaughtered for veal, while they are just babies, or even killed and thrown into a dumpster if they are deemed unprofitable. In countries like the United Kingdom, 60,000 male calves are shot right after birth each year. The mother cows are milked constantly while suffering the emotional pain of being separated from their babies, and usually suffering physical pain too, especially from mastitis. The horrendous conditions that these cow mothers are kept in shorten their lifespans, and they face a grim ending when killed at a slaughterhouse for their flesh. In many cases, the cow mother's bones are brittle due to being over-milked, and they can't walk easily or comfortably, yet they are still forced to stand in crowded transportation trucks that drive them to the slaughterhouse, with cow people collapsing or falling during long journeys. At the slaughterhouse, they can hear the cries of pain and anguish of their friends and loved ones being slain. They experience stress and terror. They are sometimes forced to walk through sanitation bars to clean themselves. Some fell and fainted or were trampled upon therein before being slaughtered. They must wait in holding pens for a seemingly endlessly prolonging period of time, all within earshot of their cow friends being killed. Their murder is certainly foul and brutal. Our most benevolent Supreme Master Ching Hai, vegan, has shared her insights that modern human society is walking towards the wrong way of life and urged humanity to make a turn.
The animal people are very pure. They are already connected with the higher source of the divine. So we can learn so much from them. You see, for example, the whale people in Vietnam, the big whales that rescue the fishermen in Vietnam, they do know that these are fishermen. They do know that they kill fish people for a living, but they still rescue them at sea when the fishermen are in danger. You see, absolutely unconditional, not judgmental. For all the generosity of spirit and blessings that they bring into our lives, how do we have the heart to kill them and eat them, to enjoy their suffering? For anyone who is not yet vegan or who has not understood why, please inform yourself of the unimaginable, utterly cruel and utmost inhumane treatment involved in meat and dairy production of fishing even, as well as lab experiments on the animal fur industry. Animal people are utterly cruelly mistreated day in and day out to feed the very industry that supplies all the meat consumed by humans. In our society, we only kill someone when he has done something wrong. And nowadays, many countries have already abolished the death penalty. And even death sentence prisoners, they have their own cell and they have clean food, clean water. They're not treated the way we treat our animal friends. This is really not human at all. Please stop all this. Please tell everybody else to stop all this. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Greetings, exceptional viewers, and wishes of love and happiness to you. I'm Alina, a herbalist skilled in the use of time-honored plant-based remedies. My life is filled with wonder as I discover the medicinal secrets of the herbs in the valleys. In our last episode, we learned about Mother Shipton, a gifted prophetess who saw ahead in time and wrote many prophecies that have come to pass. Her visions also extended to encompass happenings that are occurring in our time. Mother Shipton wrote that there will be signs that indicate when a certain time has come. This refers to the time of global disasters or the judgment times, as she later illustrates. But before describing these times, her words indicate how humans will behave when these times are upon us.
The signs will be there for all to read when man shall do most heinous deed. Man will ruin kinder lives by taking them as to their wives.
As we explored last week, one aspect of the kinder lives could indicate the exploitation, torture, killing and maiming of innocent animal people to satisfy people's greed for animal people meat and products derived from our sweet animal friends. Humans commit truly heinous acts upon the animal folks, including artificially inseminating animal ladies against their will, and then taking their babies away and murdering them. Another aspect of this writing may apply to the rampant sexual abuse that continues to this day within the Catholic Church. Clergymen continue to rape vulnerable children and babies, as well as nuns and fellow clergymen.
More than a decade later, new disclosures continue to make headlines.
Sins of the fathers.
Case after case of alleged sexual misconduct.
Committed by Catholic priests and covered up by bishops.
The bishop was warned about Cost's behavior, but kept moving him around.
In recent decades, and more intensely during recent years, these abuses are being increasingly made public in multiple countries across the globe. In France, a report found over 330,000 children were abused by over 3,000 perpetrators within the church since 1950. In Germany, 3,677 minors were molested between 1946 and 2014. In Ireland, nearly 15,000 underage victims were sexually abused between 1970 and 1990 alone. And in the United States, there have been 11,000 allegations of sexual abuse made against 4,392 priests between 1950 and 2002. During 2018 to 2021, there were another 11,765 child sexual abuse allegations reported in the States. In the case of Australia between 1950 and 2010, some Catholic religious orders had more than 20% of its members accused of sexual abuse, with one order having 40%. Most recently in Portugal, it was revealed that at least 4,815 children were abused, and the researchers were sure that the findings were only the tip of the iceberg.
Można powiedzieć, że świat dziecka w tym momencie runął. Się posypał. Poszedłem do domu, powiedziałem to mamie. Moja mama mi nie uwierzyła, ponieważ było dla ludzi w tamtejszych czasach było to do nieuwierzenia. Nie było to po prostu coś, co mogli przyjąć naturalnie. I ja automatycznie już to parę miesięcy po tym przestałem jeść. Trafiłem raz, drugi, trzeci raz do szpitala. Wpadłem w anoreksję. I było tak, że ksiądz się pojawił na kolędzie u nas. Ten sam ksiądz srebrzyński. Byłem na Kropówce w szpitalu. To był stan taki, można powiedzieć, prawie że śmiertelny.
Ja nie wiedziałem, co się właściwie stało. Straciłem poczucie swojej godności, swojego jakiegoś takiego swojego ja.
Po tym, jak zostałeś zgwałcony przez księdza, co on ci powiedział?
Żebym tego nikomu nie mówił, co się stało. Żebym nie mówił tego nawet na spowiedzi, żebym się z tego nie spowiadał. I ja tego nigdy nie powiedziałem nikomu do momentu, kiedy już nie wytrzymałem i kiedy próbowałem popełnić samobójstwo.
Noc była kolejnym koszmarem. Broniłem się. Próbowałem go odpychać, ale on był silniejszy. On w reakcji na mój opór tylko się śmiał. Śmiał się z mojej bezradności. Gwałcił mnie już nie tylko w nocy. Czasem też po plażowaniu. Po południu, rano. Wiele razy. Przez 7 dni.
Jak podzielić wiedzę, że ten sam ksiądz miał, nie wiem, pół godziny wcześniej swoją rękę w majtkach dziecka, z tym, że on potem rozdaje komunię świętą, z tym, że odprawia mszę świętą, że i ksiądz, i jego przełożeni dopuszczają do takiej sytuacji. Ja uważam, że za to powinni odpowiedzieć. I to bardzo mocno odpowiedzieć, bo to jest ich wina.
The innocent victims have been left with permanent psychological, emotional, and even physical injuries that destroyed their lives. Others committed suicide due to being raped. And while the leaders of the church attempt to hide their heinous crimes, more and more reports are being made public as the victims seek justice and express their deep pain. Research shows that the Catholic Church has known about priest pedophilia since the 1950s, and that they regularly reassigned abusive priests to new parishes that were unaware of their predatory transgressions.
Thus knowingly and willingly endangered more children within these new parishes.
Instead of trying to protect innocent people from sexual abuse, the Church instead worried about its reputation and protecting its finances, lest they be sued due to the molestations and intense suffering that the victims have endured and will continue to endure for the rest of their lives. Yet despite its clergy attacking innocent children, the Catholic Church allowed those priests to stay, and in some cases even promoted known sexual aggressors.
For the past 2 decades, the Roman Catholic Church has been in the spotlight, plagued by a child abuse problem it hasn't resolved. It's been a global reckoning, spanning at least dozens of countries.
Pope Francis opens a landmark sex abuse summit on abuse
by calling abusive clergy tools of Satan.
Some saw it as a turning point. But on the ground, as cases in the US mount, prosecutors and activists say the church is fighting hard against survivors.
We exposed the abuse within the church and their response, particularly by some of the bishops who were engaged in the conspiracy and cover-up, was to go spend parishioner money to hire lobbyists to try and make it harder for survivors to confront their abusers in court.
No one has known more about the abuse cases than the Catholic dioceses themselves. For me, nearly 30 years of my life could have been completely different had the church protected the sheep instead of that abusive shepherd.
The Attorney General's grand jury report identified more than 300 predator priests and more than 1,000 victims. It also triggered a wave of hundreds of previously unknown alleged victims to come forward and share their stories. One of those was Jimmy Pliska, who says he was raped by his local parish priest more than 40 years ago, when he was 12 years old.
The abuse was a life-changing incident that just set my life in a totally different direction. He would invite altar boys to go on fishing trips, a sleepover, and the only place for you to stay was with Father in his room, because that's all there was Father's double bed. I'm not going anywhere until he got off me, and that's when I crawled out of bed and laid on the floor in a fetal position. And it was a crime that happened to us. Since when should the church be allowed to handle criminal cases? Why isn't it in front of the judicial system, as it should be?
And man shall walk as if asleep. He does not look, he may not peep. And iron men the tale shall do, and iron cart and carriage too.
Mother Shipton predicted the age of AI, in which the man is the modern robot, walking without any signs of real life in them, without any real sense of physical perception as AI do. Just plug in with a cord behind them, the tail, then they shall function. And the same with varieties of electric cars in our modern time. Mother Shipton might have also hinted that we are in the judgment time, that humans will live their lives as if they are not awake.
By iron, she might have been referring to the Kali Yuga period, which is the spiritual Iron Age, or the Age of Darkness mentioned in Hinduism. During this time, the human race is in the most ignorant and degraded stage, forgetful of God and spiritual values with which to live life. Instead, humans predominantly live a material, shallow life that is devoid of spiritual awakening. Atheism increases, and many people place their faith in scientific logic instead of spirituality. Meanwhile, corruption within science occurs as corporations suppress research, intimidate scientists, selectively publish articles that are in their interests, and manipulate study designs. Yet the majority of people blindly accept the information that corporations and the media present, while the media is also a puppet to wider political and governmental agendas. Misinformation by large organizations is rife, as they consistently attempt to mislead the public about the true underlying cause of global warming and climate change, which is the animal people livestock industry. During the Kali Yuga, people eat food derived from animal people carcasses and secretions, with no conscience about their suffering. They choose to believe the falsely happy images that the media uses to sell animal people's flesh, and tend to ignore the deep suffering that our non-human co-inhabitants endure. Humanity is misled, and in their ignorance, they allow themselves to be led by other ignorant or malevolent individuals, whom they follow like an iron cart or carriage. Their lack of spiritual enlightenment leaves them unable to identify and resist corruption, misinformation, deception, and manipulation by those with vested interests.
In this episode, we will continue to review the words of prophetess Mother Shipton, who noted that it will be obvious when the time of judgment is upon us.
The king shall false promise make, and talk just for talking's sake.
This prophecy suggests that a leader will make untrue promises and will engage in excessive and meaningless talk without actually taking any action or producing any results. This could refer to leaders who are more interested in empty promises than in addressing the real problems of the people they are supposed to serve. One such leader who fits this description is Joe Biden from the United States. As a world power, many of the decisions made within the United States have a fast effect on other countries around the world. So we can see how important it is to have a good president for America who is dedicated to peace. But sadly, Joe Biden is well known for his habitual lies during his entire political career. The false claims he made about his life and accomplishments created an implied promise of leadership capabilities that he couldn't deliver. Today, we will present only some of the seemingly endless list of his untruthful claims.
There are not too many politicians or even just regular human beings, for that matter, who deliberately and repeatedly tell the sort of bold-faced lies that can be immediately debunked. But that's what Joe Biden has done throughout his political career. For 50 years, he has repeated verifiable lies over and over again. And yet, he has been elevated to the most powerful office in the world.
Joe Biden, I think, today is actively dishonest.
Joe Biden has a habit of making things up.
And let's talk a little bit about Joe's penchant for lying. We call this natural-born liar. And he is. It's right there. He's been doing it his entire career.
The promises, the pledges, the things to make a difference. 100 days in, Joe Biden has failed to deliver in a few key areas.
Well, 2 and a bit years in, are the lies of Joe Biden finally starting to catch up with him?
Some samples of Biden's false claims and promises. Personal matters. Number 1, his law school grades.
When Biden was a senator, he boasted about his academic achievements, which proved not to be true.
I went to law school on a full academic scholarship, the only one in my class to have a full academic scholarship. Went back to law school and in fact ended up in the top half of my class. I was the outstanding student in the political science department at the end of my year. I graduated with 3 degrees from undergraduate school and 165 credits, only need 123 credits.
Newsweek says Biden actually went to school on a half scholarship, ended up near the bottom of his class, and won only 1 degree, not 3.
Joe Biden ranked 76th in a class of 85 at the University of Syracuse Law School.
Now Biden says Newsweek is right. His memory had failed.
Number 2, plagiarizing other politicians' speeches.
When he ran for presidential candidate in 1988, his speeches copied other famous leaders, including former President John F. Kennedy's famous address, without citing the source. Parts of a speech were also taken from a UK Labour Party leader. This meant that Mr. Biden had to consciously lie about himself and his wife while delivering the speech. His plagiarism became a scandal, and he stepped down from the presidential race at that time.
But this standard is not a measure of how we can evaluate the condition of our society. It cannot measure the health of our children, the quality of our education, the joy of their play.
Yet the gross national product does not allow for the health of our children, the quality of their education, or the joy of their play.
Let us pledge that our generation of Americans will pay any price, bear any burden, accept any challenge, and meet any hardship to secure the blessings of prosperity and the promise of opportunity for our children. We shall pay any price, bear any burden, meet any hardship, support any friend, oppose any foe to assure the survival and the success of liberty. And I started thinking as I was coming over here, why is it that Joe Biden is the first in his family
ever to go to a university.
Why am I the first Kinnock in 1,000 generations to be able to get to university?
Why is it that my wife, who's sitting out there in the audience, is the first in her family to ever go to college?
Why is Glenys the first woman in her family in 1,000 generations to be able to get to university?
No, it's not because they weren't as smart. It's not because they didn't work as hard. It's because they didn't have a platform upon which to stand.
Does anybody really think that they didn't get what we had because they didn't have the talent or the strength or the endurance or the commitment? Of course not. It was because there was no platform upon which they could stand.
These clips are devastating. He looks like a Joe Biden wind-up doll with somebody else's words coming out.
If they're going to do things that are stupid as well as immoral, then they're probably too dumb to have the job of president.
Number 3. The Nelson Mandela arrest.
Biden also made the false claim that he was arrested while trying to meet with Nelson Mandela, and that Mr. Mandela later thanked him for getting arrested.
I had the great honor of being arrested with our UN ambassador on the streets of Soweto trying to get to see him on Robbins Island.
Except it's a lie.
When I said arrested, I meant I was not able to move. Cops would not let me go. I wasn't arrested.
Political matters. The rigged election.
Only a small fraction of the evidence supporting a rigged 2020 US election is able to be presented here. By November 13, 2020, the Trump campaign had over 234 sworn affidavits from witnesses who reported vote fraud. On the day of the 2020 US presidential election, many people went to sleep that night after witnessing President Trump leading in most states. But in the morning, they woke up to a surprise.
We have put together, I think, the most extensive and inclusive voter fraud organization in the history of American politics.
Etc.
Our most beloved Supreme Master Ching Hai, vegan, shared her precious insight conveyed by heavens about this election fraud.
Master, how come there is widespread fraud in this election? President Trump, his supporters, and Republican Party members think he was robbed of his winning of the election. Could Master tell us more about that, please?
It's not difficult, sadly, but it's nobody's fault, okay?
Yeah.
I don't want anyone to blame the Democrat people. It is a fraud, no doubt, but it's nobody's fault. It is these demons, we call them zealous demons, still left. I told you long ago that I didn't take them all off yet. I did take 30 more lately, okay? But it's kind of late. They hang around, these people. And then I pushed, or I wrote it somewhere in my diary, just a moment.
Yes, Master.
It goes like this. It's from the original universe protectors, okay? Mine. I had two messages. First one, it says, Trump won with flying colors.
Wow.
But zealous demons pushed workers to fraud. Exactly, no more, no less words. That's what it is.
Even with all said and done, we still remember what Master said, that we cannot just blame any individual for the chaos in this world. The gigantic, huge collective karma of all humans is to blame. So be vegan, make peace, do good deeds, are the solution to save ourselves from all mishaps.
You cannot always blame any bad leaders. We
the society have to also introspect our behavior, our way of life. If our way of life is peaceful, non-violent, benevolent or not, living according to God's commandments, God's will or not.
Yes, Master.
Whether or not we treat others as we treat ourselves, treat all creations of God as we want to be treated ourselves.
Yes, Master.
Humans have to change. I told you many times already. Just have to live according to God's commandments, according to love, peace, and harmony.
Yes, Master.
Very simple. Just be vegan, make peace, do good deeds. That's it?
Yes, that's right.
Is that a lot to ask?
No.
Yeah, that's it, okay? If they do like that, even bad leaders cannot do bad things. And good leaders will emerge and will be recognized.
Yes, Master.
We will feature more about the 2020 election fraud and Biden's broken promises in our next episode.
Greetings, splendid viewers. I'm Druid Ian, a spiritual practitioner of the ancient Celtic tradition. Last week, we started to look into Joe Biden's long history of lies. As the current leader of the United States, his deceptions perfectly illustrate Mother Shipton's following prophecy.
The king shall false promise make, and talk just for talking's sake.
His presidency started with a fraud-stained election. Since the day of the 2020 US election, various reports were coming in about voter fraud, which the mainstream media largely ignored.
No evidence of vote fraud in this election? There's plenty at this point. An election training video in Detroit, #DetroitLeaks, shows that ballot counters were instructed to enter challenge ballots into vote tabulating machines in Wayne County. Normally, challenge ballots would be set aside and not counted. And White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany told Sean Hannity this week that the Trump campaign has 234 pages of sworn affidavits from witnesses alleging vote fraud.
In some states, vote counting continued through the night and into the morning after the Republican watchers had left. The Republican watchers were not told that the vote counting was being continued. It became apparent that there were unnatural identical vote rates in Georgia, Michigan, Virginia, and Pennsylvania, that at certain times, significant numbers of votes were dumped in for Joe Biden, followed by several dozen vote batches with identical vote rates in favor of Biden. These voting ratios have been deemed impossible.
The press and the party monitors were not given notice that counting would continue into the early morning hours, and they should have been. The Secretary of State says one of its monitors was present. The counting of those heavily Democratic absentee ballots did result in a big batch of numbers coming in from Fulton County in the 1 a.m. hour on election night.
They are alleging this is one county, Wayne County, Michigan. They are saying that there was a batch of ballots where 60% had the same signature. They are saying that 35 ballots had no voter record, but they were counted anyway, that 50 ballots were run multiple times through a tabulation machine, that one woman said her son was deceased, but nevertheless somehow voted.
We've scanned 113,130 as of moments ago. We've adjudicated 106,000 plus of those.
Adjudication, the process of reviewing a ballot that may have been flagged during the ballot scanning process. Elections supervisor demonstrates how easy it is to change a vote during adjudication.
I think I want to vote for Biden. Let's let Biden win this one. And complete. Okay.
The duplication of the ballots were done by election office employees in a separate location without any oversight of a voter review panel. In 94 precincts in DeKalb County, it is statistically impossible to have 9 out of 10 voters voting for Joe Biden.
Project Veritas has insiders in the Georgia recount that are catching votes wrongly attributed to Biden.
So the second person was supposed to be checking it, right? So in 3 times in 3 minutes, she called out Biden. The second auditor caught it, and she said, no, this is Trump. Now, that's just while I'm standing there. So does the second checker catch it every time? But this lady, in 3 times in 3 minutes, from 209 to 212, she got 3 wrong.
Furthermore, mail workers reported that late postal ballots that should not have been counted were stamped with an earlier receipt date so that they could be counted in the election. There were reports of dumped postal votes perpetrated by postal workers, and even cases of ballot drop boxes being set on fire. And in a very suspicious move, the United States Postal Service ended postal police patrols just before the elections.
We patrol off postal property, or until recently, and we prevent mail theft. We protect postal property, postal employees, postal vehicles. Mm-hmm. Why has the Postal Service handcuffed postal police? It's remarkable. And during a pandemic, right before an election.
In addition to Biden's camp and his supporters suppressing and manipulating the evidence of electoral fraud, another infamous incident occurred on January 6, 2021. The rally that took place has been widely covered in the media and presented as a violent attack at the United States Capitol building in Washington, D.C. by supporters of President Trump. The deceitful news coverage of this event reported that those who went to Capitol Hill were rioters, looters, and vandalizers, and then used this incident to justify their actions as they harassed and intimidated supporters of then-President Trump. However, the actual footage of the event shows a totally different story.
The January 6th March.
It was January 6th. We're going to call it January 6th, not January 6th. It was January 6th. Maybe we can make that a thing because it was a total setup.
These are the pictures you've seen of January 6th. They're familiar because they've been playing on a loop on every media outlet in America for the last 2 years. There's a reason for that. But it turns out there's quite a bit of video you haven't seen. And that video tells a very different story about what happened on January 6th. More than 40,000 hours of surveillance footage from in and around the Capitol have been withheld from the public. And once you see the video, you'll understand why. Taken as a whole, the video record does not support the claim that January 6th was an insurrection. In fact, it demolishes that claim. Protesters queue up in neat little lines. They give each other tours outside the Speaker's office. They take cheerful selfies and they smile. They're not destroying the Capitol. They obviously revere the Capitol. The single most famous person arrested that day was a Navy veteran from Arizona called Jacob Chansley, often referred to as the QAnon shaman.
The so-called QAnon shaman. QAnon shaman.
Someone named Q Shaman.
Jacob Chansley became known as the QAnon shaman, but prosecutors called him the most prominent symbol of a violent insurrection.
He's been in jail since January, and he's trying to get out, but prosecutors say he is still too dangerous to release.
Jacob Chansley became the face of January 6th, a dangerous conspiracy theorist dressed in outlandish costume who led the violent insurrection to overthrow American democracy. For these crimes, Chansley was sentenced to nearly 4 years in prison, far more time than many violent criminals now receive. What did Jacob Chansley do to receive this punishment? Virtually every moment of his time inside the Capitol was caught on tape. The tapes show that Capitol Police never stopped Jacob Chansley. They helped him. They acted as his tour guides. What Jacob Chansley actually did was wander peacefully through the Capitol, shepherded by Capitol police officers, who literally opened doors for him. When one was locked, they went to another. Dozens of officers stood and watched him. All of them had guns. Jacob Chansley did not.
the late Brian Sicknick, Capitol Hill police officer who died the day after on January 7th. Now, first, we were lied to and told MAGA rioters threw a fire extinguisher at his head. That was not true. Joe Biden even attended the memorial service for Officer Sicknick. But Officer Sicknick was alive and well on January 6th at the time when we were later told he was dying.
Here is surveillance footage of Sicknick walking in the Capitol after he was supposedly murdered by the mob outside. By all appearances, Sicknick is healthy and vigorous. He's wearing a helmet, so it's hard to imagine he was killed by a head injury. Whatever happened to Brian Sicknick was very obviously not the result of violence he suffered at the entrance to the Capitol. This tape overturns the single most powerful and politically useful lie the Democrats have told us about January 6th. They lied about the police officer they claimed to revere. If they were willing to do that, then their dishonesty knew no limits.
And after the release of this video, Jacob Chansley was quietly released from jail for unexplained reasons, much earlier than the 41 months he was originally sentenced to serve. The only death that happened due to unnatural causes on that day was a woman named Ashley Babbitt, who was obviously unarmed, shot by a Capitol Police officer. Her mother reportedly attended Capitol Hill every day to protest the murder of her daughter. 2 years to the day on the memorial of her daughter's death, Capitol Hill police officers arrested Ashley's mother and even handcuffed her, claiming that she was blocking and obstructing roadways.
So her daughter was shot to death, unarmed, with no stated justification by an officer who shouldn't have been on the force, with a documented history of the reckless use of firearms, and it's the mother who gets arrested.
With most of the American media conspiring to deceive US and world citizens about the events, Biden continues at the helm of the country, with his tragic leadership haunting many US citizens. Our most beloved Supreme Master Ching Hai, vegan, shared her precious insights about this incident.
Master, during the certification process, many supporters of President Trump protested and raided the Capitol building. Why would his supporters do that?
They have been trying to do it in other ways, like go to court, many times. Yes. And the court always rejected them. Or just did a few times, like symbolic, and did not really want to do anything to clear the injustice.
Yes, Master.
Actually, not all of the supporters of Mr. President did that. Just some of them, okay?
Yes.
Yeah. I read on the news that it's only 90%, 90+% of them just stay calm and quiet outside. Only some of them went inside. Okay, huh?
Yes, Master.
Maybe a dozen. But of course, you understand that in every group, there are about to be some maybe more temperamental. Yes, understand?
Yes, Master.
Even though they didn't want to do anything, they didn't have any weapons. They didn't have anything anyway. And one lady was shot dead. She was unarmed. And then maybe one or two of them were inside it in the heat of the moment, yes. After all this frustration, because sometimes before also the President Trump supporters, they did protest, but they never did anything.
Yes, Master.
Mostly is the other side, like Black Lives Matters or Anti-Foul, yeah? It just takes a few people to excite some others and they follow.
Yes, Master.
Even though Mr. President has never asked his supporters to do anything, he always tells them to have peace. Don't play into their games, okay? Have peace. We must have peace. They say go home. You understand what I'm saying? Yeah.
Yes, Master.
Go home, have peace. Don't play into their hands. It's not Trump supporters who instigated that.
Yeah.
It was reported like some other group did it.
That's right.
And could be the opposition party did that so that it would blow it out of proportion. Because if the other party did not have anything to do with it, why Pelosi did not send more security if she knows already that there is a demonstration nearby?
True.
And if they think Trump and his people are violent or whatever, are not peaceful, why didn't she call for the National Guard or more police or more security forces?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
She just let it be. What?
Yes.
Huh? Everybody can ask that question.
Yes, Master.
The opposition is having a big rally, protesting next to their working place, and they did nothing. They don't even send more police. It's just normal, just a handful of them.
Yes, that's right.
They invited trouble. They wanted it to happen. Or they even organized it secretly to blame Trump.
Oh, wow.
So what else then? Huh? If they always say Trump is this, Trump is that, Trump is bad and incites violence, then why didn't they prepare? Huh? Why didn't they have more security for their people who work in there?
Yes, that makes sense.
So that means they invited it. They wanted it to happen, or they organized it.
Yes. Yes, Master. That's right.
And then blame it all on the poor old guy. Oh, man, these people. That's why I told you, Pelosi, Harris, Biden, at least 3 of them must be out before America can become better again.
Yes, Master.
Can become strong again.
In this episode, we continue our examination of Joe Biden's broken promises in relation to Mother Shipton's premonition.
The king shall false promise make, and talk just for talking's sake.
Some samples of Biden's false claims and promises. Political matters. A president of disunity.
Let's start afresh. All of us. Stop the shouting and lower the temperature. For without unity, there is no peace.
Biden promised to be a president that will unite the country. But since the start of his campaign up to today, the United States is more divided than ever, and the Biden administration played their part in it.
He was supposed to unite the country, but lately all it seems Biden wants to do is cause division. It's been a full week of Biden's relentless attacks on those semi-fascist MAGA Republicans.
I don't respect these MAGA Republicans. The MAGA Republicans are destroying America. They don't believe in democracy. The MAGA Republicans in Congress.
I think we're more divided than we ever were.
Far more. He's the most divisive president in the history of the United States, at least in my lifetime.
Americans' safety.
Before the elections, he claimed he wanted America to be safe from crime, looting and violence. But crime rates have been rising since his administration settled in the White House.
Some businesses on the West Coast are struggling to stay open now as workers report crime on the rise. A Starbucks spokesperson announced yesterday the coffee chain is permanently closing 14 stores, 6 in Seattle, 6 around LA, 2 more in Portland, Oregon. The Wall Street Journal reports the moves come after employees complained about safety concerns and rampant drug use among customers and people out on the street. Meantime, multiple 7-Eleven locations closed last night in Southern California after a series of shootings and violent robberies at the stores.
Violent crime is way up and claiming victims here in Los Angeles at a rate we haven't seen in decades. Already this year, at least 143 people have been murdered. Hundreds more have been shot.
So far in 2022, crime is up nearly 45% from last year. Nationally, homicide rates have risen by an average of 37% in the biggest cities. So far this year in Chicago, violent crime is up 36%, and Los Angeles 6% compared to the same time last year.
Despite the rise in crime, Biden and his administration have expressed support for weakened bail policies. A national strategy released on October 2021 stated, "And we will work to end cash bail and reform our pretrial system. This system allows those arrested for crimes, including violent and repeat felonies, to go free until their trial, effectively giving them the freedom to commit further crimes against members of society in the meantime."
Let me use this as an example. Police in New York arrested a man for a random and unprovoked murder aboard a subway train last weekend. And the offender was previously arrested for assault, robbery, menacing, and grand larceny, in addition to 3 other cases that are still pending. He was also previously convicted of attempted murder. He was arrested on April 22nd for stealing a motorcycle, but the judge set a nominal bail of $1, rejecting the prosecutor's request for a $15,000 bail. So if the judge had set bail consistent with this offender's demonstrated record of violence, he might have prevented the senseless murder last weekend. So, how can you justify your opposition to cash bail in light of the clear preventative effect cash bail has on keeping violent offenders off our streets?
Moreover, Biden lobbies for abortions. Abortion was the leading cause of death worldwide in 2021. But many experts state that abortions are not only violent, but inflict suffering and pain onto the unborn baby. His stance fails to protect the rights of those unborn babies as American citizens.
Congress must restore the right that was taken away in Roe v. Wade and protect Roe v. Wade. The Vice President and I are doing everything to protect access to reproductive health care. Well, already more than a dozen states are enforcing extreme abortion bans. Make no mistake about it. If Congress passes a national ban, I will veto it.
Our most beloved Supreme Master Ching Hai, vegan, shared her insights about Biden's destructive policies.
The people in the White House right now who support the worst abortion bill in the history of your country, they are devils. They're working for the devils. They're evil.
Yes, Master.
Because no one would like to kill babies that way. Oh, God, even up to the day of birth. You hear me or not?
Yes,
on
Master.
the news, it's not me who talk. It's in their abortion law.
Yes.
Protecting the murderers, earning money from that.
Terrible.
Even in any war, there cannot be so many deaths like that. In the Iraq war, they had 4,500 something soldiers dead, American soldiers.
Yes.
In Afghanistan, they had 2,400 dead soldiers, even in the war, and in other wars also.
Yes, Master.
Not innocent people, innocent babies die in millions like this, tens of millions, just in a short period of time. talking about pre-kindergarten, social care for whomever. Oh, God. It's all devil's talk. Yeah,
Yes.
they don't even know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
According to this, they're just blah, blah.
Yeah. Yes.
Like somebody has written the text and they just read it.
Yeah. Yeah.
How can you do things opposite to what you say?
Yes.
And worse, and just killing innocent by millions like this?
Yes.
Looks like this Biden and administration, they are all out for blood. They're out to destroy your country. They're out to kill all the whatever they can, in whatever means they can, up to now.
Yes.
Babies, children are the future of any country.
Yes.
Everyone knows that. And they go ahead just killing them. Just make it so easy and simple. Even pay for it. Huh?
Yes. Yeah.
Many people are hungry. They don't care. They want to pay for killing their own citizens.
Yes, Master.
If that is not civil war, then what is it then?
Failing to better the lives of working class Americans.
In his tweet the day before the election, Biden highlighted that he would work for middle-class and low-income Americans. He said it again weeks after.
It's time to reward work, not just wealth in America.
But during his first year in office, among households making less than $40,000 a year, 71% were suffering hardships due to inflation. And as of July 2022, 71% of all US workers were struggling to meet their cost of living as inflation was out of their capacity. American households are officially struggling just to survive. 17% of them missed or delayed payment of their utility bills. The survey says that these citizens could come under pressure to make cuts in their other spending in order to keep the lights on.
The utility bill save that never happened.
An opinion piece appearing under his name in the Wall Street Journal. And in it he wrote these words, quote, "A dozen CEOs of America's largest utility companies told me earlier this year that my plan would reduce the average family's annual utility bills by $500 and accelerate our transition from energy produced by autocrats." Well, not so fast. Even the Washington Post, which until very recently has been the modern-day corporate Pravda of the Biden administration, found this to be too much. Their fact-checker, the reliably left-biased Glenn Kessler, awarded Biden's claims 4 Pinocchios, pointing out that there was no reference to the savings in the transcript of the meeting with the utility executives, nor in the readout either, and that, in fact, most of the cost reductions he's referring to come from the reduced cost of driving and are expected to kick in around 2030 when Biden will be out of office and will probably not be allowed to drive anymore anyway.
We will look into more of his broken promises next week.
Win or lose, your war will reserve a great seat for you in the middle of the huge fire.
Wondrous viewers, thank you for joining us today. Please stay tuned to Supreme Master Television. May your spiritual journey be guided by the perfection of God's arrangement.
Non-veg? Eating the animal flesh won't hurt you? Surely not. Just cut a piece of your limb, and then you can feel the horrible pain.
Be vegan, make peace, do good deeds, hell not reach.
Russia, leave Ukraine or your reign now. Peace be with you too. Our programs offer many languages. Please visit suprememastertv.com/schedule and suprememastertv.com/AP.
Nos programmes offrent plusieurs langues. Veuillez visiter suprememastertv.com/schedule et suprememastertv.com/AP.
Nuestros programas ofrecen varios idiomas. Visiten suprememastertv.com/schedule i suprememastertv.com/AP.
Naše programy nabízejí více jazyků. Prosím, navštivte suprememastertv.com/schedule a suprememastertv.com/AP